Hi, Wildling. Hey, I'm still looking for some more interesting guests on European herbalism and foraging. So, if you know anybody that would want to be a guest in my podcast series, please feel free to reach out and contact me through social media, Wild Plant Forager, or through my website, wildplantforager.com. Thank you so much. Welcome to Wild, the podcast for wildlings just like you. Wildlings who want to transform the prevalent plant blindness to collective plant wisdom. My name is Lieve Galle. I've been working as a herbalist and wild plant forager in Belgium since 2002. In those years, I've seen a lot of changes. Working with plants has become more popular, but I've also seen time is running out for our planet. As foragers and herbalists in Europe, sometimes we're dealing with different plant species and different cultural approaches towards plants. In some countries, working with plants is licensed, and in others, it's almost illegal. I believe that together we can learn from one another and be stronger. There is nothing more empowering than connecting wild souls. Together, we can have a greater impact on restoring the ancient link between people and plants. And that's why, for this podcast series, I'm talking to fellow herbalists and foragers in Europe. So if you're ready to find out what you've never been told, but what your soul already knows, welcome to Wild. Hello, Wildling. Welcome to a new episode of the Wild podcast. And today I'm here with Mari Jerstad. She's a herbalist from Norway. Welcome, Mari, all the way from Norway. So, how did your love for plants get started?
Well, it started as a child, spending time outside and just enjoying their beauty and their relation to the sun, and yeah. And my grandmother's sister was a nurse and a herbalist, so she was a big inspiration for me. Also, when I was quite young, yeah.
Yeah, that seems so nice to have like this person in your life that is already working with herbs. Because growing up, I remember hearing the stories about my grandmother who was working with plants a lot, but she had died before I was even born. So I only know her from the stories. And I think it's very inspiring if you have that person still being alive while you're a child.
Yes, yes, it was. And just, the possibility that, one can work with herbal medicine, it's a path that's possible to go, and her strength and her humbleness, and it was both something that she loved to do, but also kind of a spiritual thing for her.
Oh,
So that was, yeah, it was really special. And um, yeah.
so she was a nurse and a herbalist?
Yes. She started off as a nurse, and she was a nurse in the Second World War, and she was quite a lot, like, she went through quite a lot of hefty stuff in the Red Cross,
Yeah.
like in Italy and stuff. Um, but but then she found the herbs later on and really went into that from, a very practical point of view, but also um, as like as a relation to other species, and with respect. Yeah.
Right, right. So, and what triggered you then specifically to also become a herbalist?
Well, I guess it was when I was in my early teens, and I couldn't decide whether I was going to work within medicine or as a gardener or a farmer. And um, I was just out walking, and then suddenly, I think it might have been because of some of those plants that were with me there, or something, like I just suddenly the possibility kind of opened up, and I was like, oh, that's what I'm gonna do. Okay. And then that's just been with me since.
Wow. So, because you studied herbalism in England, right?
That's right.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? How was that? How long? How was the duration of the study? Where did you study it?
Yes. Well, first of all, I was grateful to my grandmother's sister Maria, because she said, "Well, you're probably going to, unlike me, go to university. And if you do that, then there'll be a lot of theory and you won't be so much out there gathering and growing. So start there." So before I went to university, I studied organic gardening or farming on the west coast of Norway, and I got a very sort of personal relation there with the practical plants. And then so I went to Lincoln University, a 3-year degree program, and I chose it because it was like 500 hours in clinic, which I just wanted to have all that time. And I'm so grateful to the teachers there and my time there, because I mean, after sort of spending a lot of time dreaming about working with herbal medicine and thinking, well, maybe I'll have to go to the other side of the world, because clearly there isn't proper sort of education in Norway for just herbal medicine. You have to kind of combine it with all kinds of other stuff. But then suddenly I was on the school, and like everyone was into herbs, and the teachers had like spent years and years learning and teaching, and so I felt like really sort of welcomed into this amazing community that I've been dreaming about. And the approach at the school was sort of very much learning sort of materia medica, or history and philosophy of herbal medicine, and a more holistic approach. At the same time, also sort of learning biochemistry and the language of a sort of differential diagnosis and stuff, so that you can talk to other healthcare professionals. That's been really useful. Um, but I think the most useful thing has just been the time in clinic, meeting people, and practicing, and the confidence that my teachers gave me, and in myself, and the resources to sort of keep learning. Yeah.
I love how your grandmother's sister actually wanted you to learn it from the plants first before you went to herbal school, right?
Right, because I think we do learn a lot more directly from the plants. I mean, it's amazing to learn what other people have learnt, and to learn from books, and to look at research, and all of these things are important, but time that you spend with plants is just gold, isn't it?
Yes, I remember when I just graduated as a herbalist, I was so enthusiast about all the chemical compounds in plants that I would walk around and I would well, you have to know this first. Chemistry was always one of my subjects that I hated in school.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I found out I was going to have phytochemics. And as I thought, oh no, it's going to be a disaster. But I loved it because it was not abstract. It was very, I could say, okay, this thing in this plant, and this is how it works on the human body. So that really helped me to get another view on chemistry. But I remember graduating that I was just walking around and only seeing like tannins, or, just looking at the chemical composition of the plants. And I thought, no, this is just a very narrow minded thing to do. And I remember how I just blindfolded myself and I always asked for someone to assist me as a helper, but I would just go blindfolded into a forest just to use all of my senses and not just use this brain thing, or these very, you know, just not only use the head but use your whole body to work with the plants. And I think, yes, it is important to have all the theory and the chemical composition and how they work on the human body, but you need to have the full spectrum of knowledge when it comes to working with plants. At least that's how I feel it.
It's interesting those stages that you speak of, and like how sort of the resistance and then the opening up and then the sort of the sensory value of the sensory knowledge. And for me, like before I went to university, I my part of my goal was to be able to talk to plants. I was like, okay, I want to learn to talk to plants. And where can I do that? And probably nowhere in Europe. I probably have to go really far away. And but then I decided to go to university, and it was like, oh, is this the right thing? It seems a bit kind of. But then and then I sort of then I had this all this kind of chemistry stuff, and I had, like you, I had a lot of resistance to it, and I was like, oh, this is just cutting everything up, and can't we like just treat everything as living? But then as I was studying, I was living in a houseboat. And one day when I'd been sort of rehearsing or like going through this biochemical stuff and trying to learn it so that I could go through some test, and I just looked out of the window, and for a minute I just saw the river as like billions of cells just like tumbling past. And I was like, wow,
Wow.
this biochemistry is actually really powerful and beautiful, and like spinning around, moving, like it's kind of it's alive. It's a different expression, and it's very easy to lock up with it, but actually it's part of, all this other stuff. Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, what you studied in Norway is international health and ethnobotany?
Yes, when I was finished with the degree in England, I moved back to Norway, and I started to sort of get into the herbs there, but I was still really curious about the Norwegian tradition, because herb medicine in Lincoln was more sort of European, or actually, yeah, more than that as well, but nothing sort of Nordic.
Mhm.
But so I started to sort of talk to people and tried to dig, and then I realized that I want to just study more. So I did a master's in international community health, but I did my study in ethnobotany in Norway, and I was walking around speaking to older people who'd grown up without access to larger society, sort of on farms where there's no roads, just a boat, and how they grown up, uh, like how they relate to their health, and also how they relate to their local plants, and what a plant is. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And how was it if you look at these academical circles? How are they looking at herbalism? Was it something that was frowned upon or taken seriously, or just as an interesting matter of research? What was exactly the way people looked at it?
Well, in Norway, there is a sort of research group, uh, NAFCAM, which is sort of it's an institute that's sort of responsible both for telling the Norwegian people about what's safe and not safe within natural and traditional medicine, and also researching what is safe, and what's effective. Um, and this group also advises WHO on the topic. And I think this is quite unique to have a whole research group that's on that. That's sort of employed by the state to do that, and it's not just herbal medicine. It's all sort of complementary and traditional medicine systems. But that's quite well established, and really, I really appreciate that, because Norwegian people are generally very trusting of authority, and like universities and research. And so it's quite important to have this kind of institute that sort of is there to hold people's hand and yeah. But I think there's loads more to do within research. I prefer being outside and being with people, although it's great. Actually, I love going around talking to old people, but yeah, it's a massive job to be done within sort of mapping out and understanding herbal medicine in Norway.
Yes, but it's good that this research is ongoing.
Yeah.
I don't think we have anything similar in Belgium, to be honest.
No, no, there's probably, you know, individual researchers, but there's it's nice that there's a group. I think lately they've had a lot of focus on herbal medicine within immigrant groups because there's some really strong herbal traditions and they don't always speak to the doctor about what herbs they take. And
Mhm.
partly it's because sometimes, you know, the doctor can be a bit judgmental, or sometimes they feel like it's not right to say. So because they might be judged, you know. So it's really nice to map that out and to show doctors that, like, actually, maybe you can sort of be a bit more gentle with these people because they have traditions that they want to maintain and that mean something for them.
Wow. Wow. So, okay, so you studied herbalism in England, where it's possible to become a licensed herbalist. This is a thing actually in the UK or not?
It's more like a hole in the regulation system. I don't think that you have to have a degree to practice herbal medicine in England,
Right. Okay. All
but you
right.
can practice, which is great.
Yes, because that is pretty much impossible in Belgium. It's like total illegal to do that. So just because you have one-on-one consultations, right? And you do this in Norway.
Yes.
And what is the legal framework there when it comes to doing that?
Great question. So there's a lot of the same regulation in Norway as in the EU. Although we're not part of the EU, we're part of the EUS. So there's a lot of the same things. Like, so I can practice one on one. I can't prescribe so much tinctures.
Hmm.
Um, which is fine. I can prescribe a little bit of tinctures, but it has to be very small and they can't be mixed. But I've
Okay.
started to use a lot of glycerites and other menstruums that, or like other forms of extracts that.
Okay, so it's just about the alcohol content?
That's been one big thing, but there was
Okay.
also a whole list of plants that have not been allowed to sell.
We have the same in Belgium, and it's a really long list in Belgium.
Right. It's so frustrating, that list, because it was like loads of them are really safe, but there's been research on them that they're effective in medicine, so then they're not allowed. And yeah, all kinds of I mean, you probably know all about this, but um, the list was taken out of the regulatory system. Like, that was taken out. And so I emailed them and I was like, okay, does this mean that we can sell these plants? Or what does it mean that you've taken away this regulation? And then the reply was just that it's pretty much the same as before. Um, so there hasn't been any big changes, and this really confused me. So I think um, basically what I'm doing is practicing in a grey zone.
Hmm.
And of course, there are, you know, some really poisonous plants that I would never.
Yes, obviously.
Yeah, like that would be terrible. But most of them are allowed, and I see there are many people who sell them, not as herbalists, but as just sort of distributors. Um, but still, it is within some form of grey zone. So what I prefer to do is when I have clients who are happy to gather because they know, to grow because they know, or who are happy to learn, so I can teach them what's safe to pick, and who make their own medicine, both because it's really empowering, and then that will be a lasting piece of knowledge that they can have and they can share, but also
Yes.
because, it's safer for me, as a herbalist.
Hmm.
So there's like a double benefit when I manage that. But of course, some people don't have the energy. If they're very unwell, then that might
Hmm.
not be an option. So yeah.
It's interesting to hear you talking about this because what totally baffles me is how different this list of forbidden plants is in every European country. So I mainly work in Belgium, but sometimes I work in the Netherlands, and there the list is just a lot shorter, which is, and we're so close to one another. It's just a crazy thing, in my opinion. But yeah.
Yeah, it's really strange, and I was so surprised. Like almost the same time when this list got taken away, we all the people practicing natural and traditional medicine had to start paying a VAT, which is 25% of the income. So we're paying much more to the state, but then suddenly we're allowed to sell more. So yeah, and I I don't understand.
I just think somehow herbalists are like a group of people that governments don't really know how to deal with
Yeah.
at some point. It's yeah.
It's true. It's true, and this is why it's great that there's more research, because I think there's just a lot of lacking knowledge in like who we are, what we do, what
Hmm.
we know, and that kind of stuff. So um, we need to have knowledge, and I think like however much regulations there are, there's always going to be some people who practice on some level.
Hmm.
So it's just about keeping it safe, and I think maybe, that's gone a bit the wrong way, because if you make it illegal, then that's not something that's safe.
Exactly. Yes.
You have to,
Yes.
like, recognize the education systems that are in place
Yeah.
already. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And no matter how much I love the position of being the rebel and the pioneer, it would be great just to have a little bit more legal framework on this so that it's more accessible to a lot more people.
Exactly, it's about accessibility, and that's why it's sort of frustrating, because we can continue like being this sort of person who's in the gray zone, or who's just trying to carry on some cultural heritage, and keeps this sort of medical tradition alive, but it's limited how many people you can reach,
Hmm.
and especially within areas where herbal medicine is really effective, then it's a shame.
Hmm. Yeah. So you're also involved in a community herb garden. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes. So it's in the middle of Oslo, and it's it's kind of been changing a lot. It came first in 2016, like the garden, and there was a group called Herbalists who were there for a while, and then I came, and I sort of said, "Oh, can I join in with you guys?" And they were like, "Well, actually, we're going to move on because we want to start selling." Some herbs, so you can just take over. So I was like, "Oh, right, okay,
Wow.
cool." So
You came exactly at the right moment.
yeah, but luckily with, Francesca, an Italian woman, and so we did it together, and we've been so basically once a week, loads of people come through the past couple of years. And then we've been just giving them stuff to do, and like with growing, harvesting, making stuff like different things every Wednesday, and then everyone sort of sits down and has a meal, like a really nice meal from the garden. So that's been really nice. Then there's been a lot of changes because it's in the middle of Oslo now. They sort of took away quite a big chunk because they need to build a road.
Oh.
And then yeah, a bit of the funding fell off, and then like there's a new city, because there's an employed city gardener there, and so which is really
Ah.
lovely. Who's sort of
Yes.
been holding the place going, and watering when we're not there and stuff. But now there's a new city farmer, so there's like a little bit of change. But I think this season also is going to be great.
So that's a great project to reconnect people and plants, and also to, yeah, to reconnect people with one another, I think.
Yes, I think it's been really yeah, it's just been really lovely to see all these people get their hands dirty and you know, just really get in there with the plants and when you're working it's sort of more comfortable to be with people and be quiet and then talk when you want to and it's a much more natural way to socially interact and I think Norway people can often experience as quite cold, like that like people don't always they're very comfortable about like not talking to anyone else, and not necessarily super friendly to strangers. But in this setting, it's very easy to sort of get to know people and get new friends and start hanging out with them other places. So that's been a really great social aspect, as well as although of course it's in the middle of the town, so there's a lot of pollution, but still the food that people eat there has been is good. I think for people to experience that, like growing and eating your own food, and it's been really nice to offer like free workshops so that really low threshold. Now we're also offering some paid for workshops, which is like a little bit bad. It sort of excludes some people, but you know you still have to earn a bit of money. So, but I'm trying to keep the free ones going as well, so that
Mhm.
everyone, like the community, can still keep coming, you know, independently of income or life situation.
Yeah, that's something else I wanted to ask you. So you're situated in the Oslo area? Is there a lot of green space in that area, or is it very urbanized? I have no idea.
Yeah, Oslo is quite good as a capital. It's relatively small. I mean, Norway as a whole has 5.5 million people. So Oslo, yeah, is like it's also on the fjord, so it's quite easy to jump on a boat and go out to an island. A lot of the islands close to the city, you can't pick anything.
Mhm.
Which is nice that they're protected. People can enjoy them. But then if you go further out, you can gather, and also there's forests all around, so you can go in all different areas of the forest. So it's very quick to get to the forest from anywhere in Oslo. So that's one of the reasons I can I can manage living there because yeah, it's quite a green place. Yeah.
Wow, I love that. Everyone should have like a forest nearby or just green space or, yes, in some form or another. Yes. Wow. Yeah. So, I've read on your, I think it was on your Instagram page that when you do one-on-one consultations with people, you like to take them for a walk outdoors. Do you notice a difference in just doing this as an indoors thing or going out for a walk with people?
I love going out for walks. I mean, it's just so great to get out, both for me and for them. So I really prefer that, but it's also, I mean, it's sort of it can be a little bit less focused, which sort of gives a little bit of light, and you integrate the weather and you know whatever wild animals you might come across, or you know you're sort of much more in a place than just sort of in clinic, um, and it's quite different who comes because I have a lot of people who have issues with energy levels, so then that often isn't the case. But when they do come, then that's really nice. But
Mhm.
that, of course, you know, I have to offer being able to sit down in clinic as well. Yeah. But I mean, it's also very seasonal because in Norway, a lot of the year you have ice all around the ground, and I wouldn't like to take someone on a
Right.
walk and they just like fall over the
Right.
ice. So luckily that hasn't happened. But yeah, it's I think people just don't usually book in the winter walks so much.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes. So how do you deal with the Norwegian winters as a herbalist? I mean, because I think the time frame in which you can pick plants or make preparations is a lot smaller than here in Belgium. And I was wondering if, like, what I was personally wondering was maybe they work more with evergreen plants like spruce or I don't know. Is it?
Good question. Well, I mean, to be honest, I wonder how you manage because you're gonna have to be going out like all year round, whereas I get this nice break where I can relax and, recharge and sort of be in my winter mode. And then, of course, when spring comes, it gets very busy and all of these plants come at once. And so I do work with spruce and pine, and but often they're great to harvest in the spring.
Hmm. Yes, when you have the new fresh green tops. Yes.
I mean, it's tasty. You can have a little bit throughout the year as well. But yeah, off there's a lot of spring stuff, summer, and then autumn, and then the winter.
Then there's just hibernation in winter.
Mostly. There are some mushrooms that still stick around for a while after the
Okay.
plants have died back. But yeah, it's less, yeah. Which
Uh-huh.
I really appreciate because I need that. I think also, in the summer, the light becomes much longer. Because I live in Oslo, I don't have the midnight sun, but still the daylight. Like these days, it gets dark around 10 in the evening, and then it's light already when I wake up.
Hmm.
So that also gives extra energy. Whereas in the winter, it's dark when you go out. And if you're working inside, you're not going to see any lights, yeah, until you sort of go home and it's still dark. And so it's a more kind of restful. So you have the clarity of the cold, you have the stars. It's a different kind of work.
Hmm. Hmm. So we have, yeah, we have winters here too in Belgium, but they are not as long lasting, not as intense, I think. It's rarely covered in snow here. It's rarely freezing for several days or several nights in a row. So yeah, we can still harvest. Of course, it's not the same as in summer or in spring or in autumn, but we can still harvest some roots in the winter.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I have to say I also like this cycle of the seasons, so that you have when there is a lot of light and you feel very energetic, that there is a lot of work to be done, and then in the winter it's darker, less hours of light, and then you can sort of go into hibernation modus. And still some things need to be done, but it's different. It's not that ultimate activity that is there in the summer.
Right. And it's so nice when the spring comes and you haven't seen these plants, the whole winter, and then it's this kind of joy of reconnecting and be like, yay, here we are,
Exactly, exactly.
whole summer, and so fantastic. And then when the autumn comes, it's like, oh no, the plantain's already gone. It's
Yes, and this is the crazy thing that I notice with myself when it's winter time and it's like gone. The bird's song is gone. The plants are gone. And I actually don't realize how much I'm missing it until I hear the birds again and until I see the plants coming up again. And then I can be moved to tears just to see them or hear them again. It's so crazy because it happens every year again and again and again.
but it's like this is part of the blessing of the seasons is that we often don't know what we've got or how lucky we are until it's taken away, and then it's like,
Hmm.
oh wow, it's so great to have these species in this place. We're so lucky to have them. um,
Yes, it makes spring so much better than it already is. If we wouldn't have winter, yes, I think spring would be a little bit bleaker than it is now.
right, yes, and I wouldn't have energy to be running around harvesting if I
Hmm.
hadn't had rested on properly.
Yes. So, if I think geographically, like, I know this is, of course, it's generalization. I want to clear that out. But like in France, they usually make a lot. If they work with herbs, they like to make sweet preparations, like sweets or liquors, or and I know the Anglo-Saxon world likes to make tinctures. And is there like what kind of herbal preparations are used in Norway? Um, or are there some typical Nordic things that don't see happening a lot in the rest of the world?
Well, one thing that's historically been really big, it's not so big anymore, but I still hear some people talk about it in relation to grandparents and so on, is like a herbal porridge, which is basically
Ah,
like um, for external use that you put on a wound, and they use this word porridge, and it's quite a wide term. I mean, Norwegians, before the oil, we're a really poor country, like really just farmers and farmers that were struggling to get by. So porridge was like a kind of quite a big part of life in general, I think. And there are many different types of porridge, and then they also made porridge with plants and used that to put on different skin conditions or different complaints. Yeah.
wow. But so, like, what was the base of the porridge?
Yeah, so for a long time, I thought it was sort of an oat porridge with a bit of
Uh-huh.
herbs in it.
Uh-huh.
But I realize now that actually it is like a pure herbal, it's kind of boiled herbs
All right.
that you just put on. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yes, if I look at the tradition here in Belgium and in Germany, I know a lot of people know that the poultice is made of cabbage leaves, which sometimes they're just crushed with a rolling pin, but sometimes they're steamed lightly and then put on like a wound. Or but really this idea of a herbal porridge is totally new to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I must say I haven't practiced it so much, but it's definitely something I haven't seen anywhere else, and it's
Yes.
referred to in the old literature. So,
Okay.
yeah, I've heard people talk about their grandparents and stuff using herbal porridges. Otherwise, um, historically, also herbs were used a lot to taste different, like many different types of beers.
Mhm.
And then there's this very, very strong tradition with juniper, boiled juniper that has like a special name which they use to clean all kinds of wounds,
Oh,
and clean the hair, and they use this, like, it's a decoction basically, which I know is very, very common and is still something that people make, but not so much. I mean, people in Norway are generally not tea people, it's mostly coffee, which also obviously is a plant.
yes.
But, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what always fascinates me is how, like, I know in Ethiopia, they add some spices and some herbs to the coffee, but in Belgium, this is absolutely not done. Is it a thing that happens in Norway?
No, not so much, not so much.
It's crazy how much black tea we have that has herbs added to
Yeah,
it,
that's
but not the
true.
coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, but then there are, like, coffee replacements with dandelion and stuff, but that's not
Hmm.
particularly Norwegian.
Hmm.
But that is, yeah, I guess it's come here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you also were involved in the mobile herbal clinic in Calais,
That's
or
right.
maybe you still are? Uh, all right. Please tell me all about it.
Yeah, well, um, I guess, the situation, with refugees is kind of pretty dire, and it's not so great to look at the news and just be like, "Oh, it's so bad. I can't do anything about it." And going to Calais for me, like, it's not. I haven't been there that many times. I mean, I'm really grateful for the herbalists, the amazing herbalists who keep this running. I've just come in a little bit here and there, and it's just been a good feeling of coming in and just standing there with these people and just being like, I care, and not,
Mhm.
it's because they come from often really harsh conditions, and then they go to the UK and they often just get sent back, so that like the it's not as if we can come and save them in any way, but um but just being there and just being like, okay, we're people too, and we're sorry that you're going through this, and that our government's um, has put you in this position, or like treating you this way. That's meaningful, and often people have a sort of a relation to herbal medicine and can relate to that. Not everyone, and not everyone wants it, which is cool, but um yeah, there's I guess it was been a little bit overwhelming. The first time it was a little bit overwhelming for me because I'd never really been in that kind of situation. But yeah, it's really good. It's interesting to see how herbs can work also in a first aid situation,
Mhm.
because you hear so much about, yeah, it takes time for them to work. They're not like pills. You can't, just, and I'm really grateful for A&E. And in Calais, we often end up driving people to, or referring to, hospitals, and that's definitely very clear, like what we can and cannot do.
Mhm. Mhm.
And a big part of the job there is just telling people where they can access different things. And in some situations, they can't access stuff, and it's just kind of rubbish because, if there's an outbreak of scabies and people can't even shower, then it's
Mm.
a bit hard.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible that we still treat people, human beings, this way in the 21st century.
Right. And now the UK is going to be sending like people to Rwanda. Like, this is it's just so depressing. It's like, um but then just going there and turning up
Mhm.
feels like, okay, I'm part of the world. I'm not making a massive difference, but at least I'm part of the world. And the Norwegian uh, the state is really, really strict, as well. So it's been one of the strictest states in Europe for like sending people back and stuff. So it feels nice because there are herbalists from different places in Europe, from like mostly England and Scotland, but also Germany, Sweden, Denmark, France, different places, and also doctors who come sometimes as well.
Mhm.
So that's really nice to kind of to meet around that, and to see like other herbalists who care, and work together. So yeah.
Yes, yes. And what herbs are most used in that context?
Well, there's a lot. Well, when I've been there, at least, there've been a lot of coughs and colds and that kind of stuff. And we use just glycerites for that
Mhm.
because several Muslims, and yeah, we just, yeah, easier to not have alcohol. And then there's been skin conditions, so like wound herbs, and yeah, fungal infection kind of.
Mhm.
Um, so it's quite symptomatic, which it has to be when it's just acute. And then we've been giving, like in some situations, sort of sleep related, or sometimes people have asked for, like, can I have help for my mental health? Like,
Mhm.
it's rarer that people ask for that, but they do sometimes, and it's nice to have something to give them. And then there's digestive,
Mhm.
like common digestive complaints. And then we can't really do that much for scabies. We have like some symptomatic relief, and we're like, just please go to the, go and get some pills for that, because like with these conditions, we can't really fix it with herbs.
Yes, and it's really contagious. So yeah.
Yeah, it's better if they take the pills for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you make glycerides. So, like, for instance, if someone has mental health problems, what are some of the herbs that you think about that could help them?
Yeah, well, so there's a farm in England who that makes a lot of the herbs for calais, and it's quite like big quantities. But when they've been there, it's between like 300 or 400 and like 700 or 800 people during a week that come through.
Oh.
And there's usually about 4 people there practicing. So I haven't been making, but
Hmm.
it's great. There's a team who are in the UK and growing stuff, and then people contribute with what's needed there. But yeah, mental health. So it's really interesting picking out the plants that can be relevant because you have to think about needs to be safe for low and high blood pressure. It needs to be safe for like all kinds of conditions that you like that person might have. So we have to
Hmm.
have very safe, but also very effective plants because it needs to be effective in this kind of condition. So they have to really feel the difference. We really want it to work for them. I don't remember all the herbs that are in that mix. I do believe that lemon balm is one of them.
I was thinking about that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's a lovely plant, isn't it?
Yes, and of course, I hear what you're saying. It has to be a very broadly approachable herb because you don't know the background of the people, if whether they have like high blood pressure or any other issues, and it has to be very safe.
Yes, we don't have time to sit, for an hour and talk with people. We can
Hmm.
ask some questions, but because there's just hundreds of people coming through, we have to just use very safe plants.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Wow, I think it's beautiful that even in those conditions, some people are helping out with herbs to help other people. And I remember myself, I will never forget this moment. I was visiting a friend in the UK, and I had to cross the French UK border. And so this was actually in Calais. And this was in a bus, me and my two kids. And we were riding on a bridge, and I could see the barbed wire from the bridge. Then, and if you look down, you could just see all the trucks driving. And that's the moment I realized, whoa, some people are this desperate that they are trying to jump off a bridge to fall on a truck to enter the UK. And I thought, and I can just freely travel between those two countries because I'm born in Belgium, but it's just purely a coincidence. I could have been born somewhere completely else in the world. And it struck me like lightning. Um, yeah.
It's quite shocking being there and those barbed wires, and there's a lot of police violence, and where they just take away the camps, and they like when I was there once, they'd built this mosque out of rubbish, and the police just came and like broke it completely, and just everything all the time. They're moving so much around that often they hang their toothbrushes up in the tree so that when the police come and ruin the tents, at least they've got a toothbrush.
Oh,
It's just like
oh dear.
completely and it's so strange, as you say, because it's so having been born in these countries that often like Norway produces a lot of weapons and sends to areas of conflict, and these people come from those areas, and then it's no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, one other question I have for you, Mari. It's a question that I usually ask to my podcast guests is, well, we've been talking about herbs, about herbal traditions. Um, we've also criticized the system a little bit, I think. So did you ever hear that you were very lucky to live in this time, because in previous times you would have been burned alive?
Yeah, people sometimes say that jokingly.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know what I feel about that. Partly because in Norway, anyway, many of the women who were burnt, okay, they were much more midwives than herbalists, although
All
midwives often
right.
use herbs. But there
Mm-hmm.
were also a lot of women who weren't herbalists who were
Mm-hmm.
burnt. Um, and and like when people like to call me like a witch, which I think is fine. I don't really identify as a witch,
Mm-hmm.
and some people do, and that's also totally fine. But um, it's been used very negatively, and I don't think people who practiced herbs back in the day necessarily identified as a witch. In Norwegian, there's the sort of expression like trollkjerring, which means like troll woman, or sort of troll also means like trolldom. It means magic. Um,
Ah.
so um, so that like klok kone, wise woman, or trollkjerring would have been more sort of the terms that one used. Um, yeah, but yeah, I haven't delved so deeply in the history of women and men who were burnt.
Mm-hmm.
In Norway, also a lot of men were burnt in Sami regions because in the indigenous group of people in the Sami culture, often it's been men who practice magic,
Mm-hmm. Right.
although women, I think, in that tradition, or actually generally people know a lot about plants in those traditions and have done. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Wow. This was a really interesting conversation. Just one last question. What do you think could still happen in the future to, how to say, to stimulate more connection between plants and people? What would be great if it would already be happening in the world?
I think it would be great if we took a moment, another moment with other species, plants, I think, trees, to um, to observe them and to learn from them because they're all around us all the time, and often we have a relation with them that either we should get rid of them or we should use them.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have that kind of relation with other people, then it's not great to sort of feel like either I should get rid of like someone or I should use them, right? And I don't think that's a useful thing for other species. And I think that we're quite new as a species, and we got quite a lot to learn from some of these um, species that have been around a lot longer than us and who know a lot more about sticking around for a long time. And I think if we spend more time um, without sort of music in our ears and sort of running past through, just like stopping and being and listening and spending time, like long time, like just sitting and staring and being open with our senses, and both observing ourselves and our surroundings, I think that that would be really useful, as well as just recognizing that maybe we aren't always the most intelligent, you know, species. But like without saying anything bad about us, just sort of let's learn. Let's learn. Let's spend more time and learn, because we seem to often feel like we don't have so much time, right? But it's funny how when you go out and you sit out and you're just there, time can expand, and you just feel so much better. There's this amazing generosity with a lot of species, when you take the time to listen to them. Yeah.
I love that. I'm drinking your words, really. I love it. I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much, Mari, for this wonderful conversation. Thank you, Wildy, for listening again to this episode. I hope to see you back for the next one. And in the meantime, keep powdering your nose with dandelion pollen. Bye bye. Yes, and for those who want to take a look around at Mari's website, her website is marikape.no. I will spell it out for you. marikaape.no. That's for Norway. And you can also follow her on Instagram. A warm thank you for listening, Wildy. Are you feeling a wild itch after this episode? Well, just head over to wildplantforager.com and feel free to connect with me on social media. I'm looking forward to the next episode. I hope you'll be there. But for now, just go outside and follow your wild heart.